I woke up under harsh white lights, my arms and legs numb, and a deep, throbbing pain in my lower abdomen that made it almost impossible to breathe. A doctor leaned over me and said, "Congratulations, Luke. The extraction went smoothly. Everything's been stored safely for the cloning process." I had no idea what he was talking about until I realized I was in a post-op recovery room. There was a fresh incision stitched up across my side, and hanging at the foot of my bed was a chart labeled Voluntary Reproductive Tissue Donation. But I never agreed to anything. I never signed a single form. I never even talked to anyone about donating anything. Before I could say a word, the door swung open. My brother walked in. Dr. Ethan Whitmore, wearing a white coat, holding a cup of coffee, and looking completely unfazed, like he'd just finished a routine hair transplant. "You okay?" he asked, like I'd just woken up from a nap, not been violated in the most horrific way. I tried to sit up, but my body refused to move. Ethan gently placed a hand on my shoulder and pushed me back down. A soft, brotherly gesture, from someone who had just stolen my right to control my own body. "Relax," he said. "It's all legal. Dad signed the authorization 3 months ago, and the psychiatrist confirmed that you wanted this. You just don't remember." I nearly threw up. Next to the meds cabinet, I saw a file, already printed and ready to go. Inside were photos of me smiling, shaking hands with doctors, sitting in a staged counseling session, looking totally on board. The signatures matched mine, but the handwriting wasn't mine. I turned to Ethan. He smiled. "Welcome to the family mission, Luke. Good genes shouldn't go to waste." Moment, I realized I wasn't just betrayed. I was an experiment in my own damn family. If you think having your own family strip you of bodily autonomy sounds impossible, then you've never met the Whitmores. My father, Dr. Samuel Whitmore, was once a renowned biomedical researcher at Columbia University. After my mom died suddenly when I was 5, he turned our house in Brookline, Massachusetts into a private lab. Every dinner started with the same question: "Do you feel like your DNA is going to waste today?" I'm not joking. By the time I was 8, my dad had enrolled me and my older brother Ethan into a genetic optimization program of his own design. Bone density scans, hormone profiling, brain performance analysis. Once a month, he held an internal review board where I had to present updates on my growth charts, sleep patterns, and explain why I hadn't yet reached genetic potential. Ethan? He thrived in it. While I tried to just be a regular kid, Ethan devoured every piece of research our dad gave him. He read science journals instead of comic books, gave blood samples weekly without flinching, and treated the human genome like a jigsaw puzzle he was born to solve. In high school, my dad made a declaration I'll never forget. "We are superior blood. This genome must be replicated. You two are the finest bioweapons I've ever created." I laughed. I thought he was kidding. Ethan didn't laugh. He looked at Dad like he was listening to God himself. I started pulling away at 17 when I applied to law school. Not biomedical science, like Dad and Ethan had planned. I chose health law and bioethics, maybe as a form of rebellion. I wanted to understand boundaries, human rights, where advanced science ends and human dignity begins. I kept my distance, but I didn't cut them off entirely. I thought, somehow, they were still my family. Controlling, obsessed, eccentric, but not malicious. I was wrong. When Ethan launched the Future Life Fertility Institute the year I turned 26, I knew he was putting Dad's vision into practice. They advertised it as a cutting-edge clinic, helping couples struggling with fertility access superior genetics selected from ideal DNA profiles. Sounds noble, but I knew better. They were harvesting genes from people like me. I remember one Thanksgiving dinner, I finally asked my father directly, "Do you think forcing someone to donate their genetics without consent is ethical?" He sipped his wine and replied, "If a child born from superior genes could cure cancer one day, maybe we should rethink the whole idea of consent." Ethan just nodded in agreement. I stood up and left that night. I didn't come back for nearly a year, and now, lying here, stitches still fresh, my biological material stolen, my autonomy erased, I finally understand. What I once dismissed as quirks was actually a genetic supremacist ideology passed from father to son, and now forced onto me. I'm not a member of this family anymore. I'm the next subject in their cloning project. To the public, Ethan was the perfect image of a doctor, handsome, brilliant, head of a successful fertility clinic, always polite and composed. He was invited to talk shows, honored at major medical conferences, praised in the media as the man bringing hope to infertile families. And me? I worked at a non-profit that fought for reproductive rights, helping women who'd been forced into motherhood or exploited by illegal egg donation centers. I didn't go on TV. I didn't get medals. But I knew I was on the right side. We were polar opposites, and my father loved that. He always knew how to pit us against each other. I remember one night in New York during an award ceremony for Ethan. My father stood on the stage, hand on Ethan's shoulder, and said into the mic, "I have two sons. One practices law, the other creates life. One questions the future, the other builds it. I'm proud of both, in very different ways." The audience laughed. I sat in the last row, swallowing what felt like a chunk of ice. Ethan knew it. He never missed a chance to remind me that he was the one with genetic value. At family dinners, he'd wink at Dad and say, "If Luke doesn't want to leave behind a biological legacy, that's fine. I'll double mine to make up for it." It sounded like a joke, but it wasn't. Once he even sent me an email with an attachment. It was my DNA report, one he'd accidentally collected when I visited the clinic for a seminar. The message read, "Strong disease resistance, cognitive ability in the top 2%. Shame to waste it." I blocked him after that. But looking back now, it wasn't a joke. It was a warning. I didn't know Ethan and my father had been planning this for years. They fabricated my medical records, created a fake psych profile, claiming I had once struggled with gender identity, that I'd expressed a desire to leave something behind in case I didn't live long. I did say that, but it was in a college essay, a philosophical piece, nothing to do with genetics or reproduction. They took fragments of my life, words, gestures, offhand thoughts, faults and stitched together a version of me I didn't recognize. A fake Luke. A version who'd willingly donate his DNA. A version who'd consent to being carved up in the name of humanity. And the worst part? The media ate it up like candy. They believed Ethan. They saw me as the unstable brother, the troubled soul, and painted Ethan as the brave sibling who sacrificed so his brother could have a purpose. I didn't just lose control of my body. I was losing my identity. I remember that day clearly, my 30th birthday. I had planned to spend it far away and anywhere but near my family. I just wanted to escape the never-ending loop of, "You should settle down," and "When will you give us a grandchild?" But then my father called. He said he was making my favorite meal, and for the first time in years, he said something that actually sounded sincere. "Let's make peace, Luke. This birthday is about you, no one else." I let my guard down. I shouldn't have. The Whitmore house in Brookline was decorated like a cozy family gathering. Ethan hugged me, all smiles. Everyone acted polite, warm. Even my ex-girlfriend Lauren was there. Lauren, who used to intern at Future Life. We broke up after I found out she'd been collecting medical data on me during our relationship. And yet, there I was, sitting across the table from her. Foolish. It started after my second glass of wine. I didn't feel drunk. I didn't feel buzzed. I felt cold, like someone had pulled the plug on my brain. My vision blurred, my hearing dimmed, and the last thing I heard was Ethan whispering to someone behind me, "Get him to the basement. We don't have much time." I woke up in darkness. My eyes were covered. My mouth was bone dry. My hands were lightly bound with medical rubber ties. No beeping monitors, no smell of antiseptic, just silence. Dead, sterile silence. Then the door creaked open, and my father's voice came through, calm and steady. "Don't fight it, Luke. This is for you, for the future." I screamed, or tried to, but only a hoarse gasp escaped. A needle slid into my wrist, and everything faded again. When I woke up, I was in a stark white recovery room. Heart monitor, IV drip. A sign on the wall read, "Futura Recovery Facility, Wing C." Not a public hospital, not a psych ward, a private facility, run by Ethan and my father. I raised my hand, bandages wrapped around my lower abdomen. Beneath the hospital gown, a fresh incision. Swollen, itchy, burning. I yanked out the IV. Pain shot up my arm. On the bedside table was a medical folder. The first line jumped out at me. "Egg cell viability high. Sample code LW003. Not just once, not just one sample. They had catalogued me. Broken me down into genetic batches like I was property. Below that line was a schedule. In 2 weeks, the next harvest would proceed if the patient remained stable and non-resistant. Patient? I wasn't a patient. I was a biological host. I dry-heaved onto the cold tile floor. They didn't just want my DNA. They wanted to mass-produce me. And my birthday? It was the trap. A celebration staged for one purpose: to strip away what little humanity I had left. I sat curled up in the corner of the room. My body still ached from the surgery. Cold, numb, throbbing. But my mind was worse. I couldn't understand how the hell they pulled this off without anyone speaking up. No doctors, no nurses, no one called the police. No one asked me, "Did you consent to this?" And then it hit me, because everything had already been arranged. I dragged myself to the desk in the corner and opened the medical folder. Inside was a scanned document, Emergency Medical Authorization Form, signed by me. Apparently, it gave my father full legal power to make all medical decisions on my behalf, in case of temporary cognitive impairment. The reason? Patient has a history of trauma-induced cognitive disorder. It sounded technical, reasonable, but it was completely made up. I've never had that condition, but according to the hospital files, I had once voluntarily visited Future Life for post-trauma genetic counseling, and there was even a video. Low res, but it looked like me, sitting in front of a camera saying, "I want to leave something behind, in case I don't live long." The voice was hoarse, the eyes distant, but I know it. That video was edited or staged. On the monitor by my bed, an email was open. From Ethan, sent to Futura's internal medical team. Subject line, patient LW00123 enters phase 2, retrieval cleared. Psychiatric conditioning recommended for compliance. They didn't just want my biological material. They wanted to rewire my mind, make me believe I had volunteered. That explained everything. Why people still believed Ethan was the selfless doctor helping his troubled brother. The press was eating it up. Headlines about the older brother giving his sibling a higher purpose, passing on a perfect genetic legacy. I was emotional. Propaganda. The door suddenly opened. It wasn't a nurse. It was Lauren, my ex, the one I used to trust, now listed as my recovery monitoring specialist. "You're awake. Good," she said. "Ethan's been worried. Your father, too. But they need your cooperation if you want to be discharged early." I stared at her. My voice cracked. "I never agreed to any of this. This is kidnapping." She smiled. That soft smile I once fell for now made my skin crawl. "Luke, you signed. You just don't remember. The ethics board approved it. It's all legal. We're just helping you finish what you started." She pulled out a glossy brochure from her coat pocket. "Rebirthing Hope, How Genetic Donors Are Changing the World." On the cover, a photo of me, in a suit, holding a newborn, clearly AI generated. Under the image it read, "Luke's Story, From Lost to Life Giver." I almost threw up. Lauren placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Don't resist, Luke. Here you have one choice. Become a symbol, or become a problem." Then she turned and gently closed the door behind her. And right then, I knew. No one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. But to escape, I needed proof, and I only had one shot. One, to flip the game from the inside. I spent my entire first night awake, not thinking about the pain, not even the betrayal. I was thinking about strategy. There was no doubt now. I was being held inside a facility fully legalized by the system. They had medical records. They had video footage. They had a team of caregivers and licensed medical staff. If I screamed, fought back, demanded my rights, they'd just label me a non-compliant psychiatric patient. But what if I played by their rules? The next morning, I pressed the nurse call button and asked gently, "May I speak to Dr. Ethan? I think I need a better understanding of the mission." The nurse, a thin, tired-looking woman, blinked in surprise. Maybe they'd prepped for resistance, but she quickly masked her reaction and nodded. An hour later, Ethan walked in, beaming like he always did on TV. "I knew it," he said. "You just needed time to see the path clearly." I didn't respond directly. I looked him in the eye, and for the first time in my life, I acted. If I really do consent, can I be involved in the process? I mean, from a legal, administrative standpoint. I studied law. I could be useful. Ethan narrowed his eyes. He knew I wasn't the type to suddenly awaken, but what I said made sense. If I were trying to reclaim capacity, then asking to review the process was a logical step. "We'll consider it," he said. "But first, full cooperation. Start by keeping a therapy journal. Track your mental progress." I nodded. Another performance. Another tool to gather intel. 3 days later, I was moved to a semi-open wing, a space with a small library, monitored computer access, and a handful of recovering patients. I started using the dusty old computer in the reading room, pretending to research nutritional needs, while testing backdoor entries into the facility's internal network. Meanwhile, I began talking to others. One of them was Andrew, mid-30s, quiet, always wore headphones, eyes distant. But I noticed, every time a staff member walked in, he stopped typing and changed his screen. One evening, I sat beside him in the reading room. When no one was watching, I whispered, "They faked your consent forms too, didn't they?" He didn't turn his head, just gave a small nod. "I used to be an IT engineer," he murmured. "They dragged me in after I refused to let my girlfriend use my DNA for IVF. Her dad's a major Futura investor." I held my breath. A real ally. "I need evidence," I said. "Anything that can bring Ethan and my father to court." Andrew exhaled. "I've got extracted logs of sample tracking, internal system records, but I need additional authentication keys to export them. Only Ethan, or someone with joint authorization like your father, can release them." I clenched my fist. So I needed deeper access, and to get that, I had to fake deeper compliance. That night, I opened the therapy journal they gave me. On the first page, I wrote just one line. "I'm not insane. But if I want to survive, I'll have to act insane. Perfectly." I would learn to smile when needed, nod at the right moments, look them in the eye, and say exactly what they wanted to hear. Because only then would I leave this place intact enough to take the whole system down. My plan was moving faster than I expected. After 3 weeks of strong recovery, I was granted expanded access to the library, allowed to join group therapy sessions, even permitted 30 minutes of outdoor time every morning. Andrew and I slowly built a covert system of communication. He showed me how to use a hidden proxy gate on the facility's internal network. I, in turn, charmed the nurses, picked up shift schedules, and identified staff with Level 2 system access. Every night, I'd return to my room and open my recovery journal, writing like the perfect little patient. Today I thought more deeply about genetic responsibility. Maybe Ethan's right, maybe good genes should be preserved. But in my head, every word was a blade being sharpened. I thought I was in control, until one night, it was a Tuesday, I had just finished logging into the computer using a temporary ID Andrew had hacked. I was backing up files on manipulated donor extractions. One of them was mine, LW0923, with the next harvest scheduled in 72 hours. I was about to pull out the USB when I heard fast footsteps behind me. I turned and froze. Ethan. Not in his lab coat, not the polished nation's doctor persona. His eyes were bloodshot. He slammed his hand on the desk and said, voice cold as steel, "You think I didn't know?" I didn't get a word out. He ripped the USB from the port, yanked the ID badge from my neck, and shouted, "Code Alert 7.1. Patient LW displaying cognitive disruption. System breach in progress. Emergency protocol." The reading room door burst open. 2 medical security officers rushed in. I tried to explain, begged, shouted that I was only accessing my own data, but no one listened. No one wanted to listen. They pinned me to the bed, injected a tranquilizer. My first dose since waking up in this place. Just before I blacked out, I heard Ethan say, "No longer soft, no longer kind. I gave you a chance, Luke, but clearly, your memory still needs correcting." I woke up in a completely different room. No windows, soundproofed walls, machines everywhere. A chair with IV ports, LED lights spinning slowly overhead. A stranger in a white coat walked in, Dr. Harrison, according to his name badge. Rapid cognitive reformatting specialist. He smiled. "We just want to help you remember what you've forgotten. Memories can be distorted by trauma. We'll clean that up for you." I tried to move. My limbs were secured by soft restraints. Not painful, but inescapable. On the table next to me, a vial with a yellow label. Red text, "Experimental, internal research use only." I screamed, but the room was soundproof. No one heard. Just as I thought this was the end, the door flew open. A nurse rushed in, pale-faced, holding a file folder. "Stop. This patient is under legal dispute. You're not authorized to begin neuro-intervention." The room fell silent. I looked closer. It was Amelia, the night shift nurse I'd spoken to once. I didn't remember what I'd said, but maybe she had seen enough to suspect the truth. Dr. Harrison sighed and stepped back. "Postponed, then. But I'll be informing the medical proxy." They moved me back to my private room. I lay there, body trembling, head pounding, heart racing, but deep down, I knew I still had a shot. Amelia might be the next key. And I had 72 hours before the next harvest, if I didn't escape before then. They wouldn't just take my genes, they'd erase me from myself. I woke up the next morning on the same stiff mattress. My throat was dry. My wrists still bore faint red lines from yesterday's restraints. There were no cameras in the room now, or at least none I could see. They knew I was still classified as high risk, so they were watching, just more discreetly. I couldn't sleep. Every minute felt like an hour. In my head was the image of that yellow-labeled vial, the one marked experimental. If Amelia hadn't come when she did, I might not even remember my own name. She was the reason I still knew who I was. Around 10 a.m., the door opened. It was her. No uniform, just a gray coat and sneakers. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were clear. She walked in like a regular staff member, set a tray of food on the table, and gently closed the door behind her. We didn't speak for the first 5 seconds. Then I whispered, "Why did you help me?" She took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eyes. Inside them was old anger and grief that never healed. "My sister's name was Naomi," she said. 5 years ago, she was brought here after refusing to sign an egg donation consent for her boyfriend, the son of one of Futura's major donors. I held my breath. They said she was hormonally unstable, delusional. I had just graduated nursing school, got hired here as a trainee, and I believed them. I believed Ethan. I believed the director. Her voice cracked. Until I found out. Naomi's file was deleted. Her name was gone. Only her code remained, NF Ramon 432. And a week later, she disappeared. They told me she was transferred. I searched the entire state database. Nothing. My sister never left this place. I whispered, "They killed her." Amelia gave a tiny nod, lips pressed tight, holding back tears. Then she pulled a small black USB from her pocket. "This is the system log from the sample storage room. I've been copying it for the past 4 months. It has real names, sample codes, reproductive viability scores, all encrypted harvest records, including yours." My hand shook as I took it. It felt sacred. "Do you have anyone on the outside?" she asked. "Lawyer? Journalist? Someone who can act?" I nodded. Sandra, a friend of mine, working in a civilian bioethics investigation group. We'd worked on a class action suit together. I was sure she'd still be in contact. The problem was, all my communication had been cut off. Amelia spoke quickly. "I'm on night shift tonight, between 2 and 4 a.m. The hallway undergoes a power diagnostic. I can leave your door unlocked, but only for 15 minutes. After that, I can't help you anymore." I nodded, heart pounding. This was it, my only shot. What if I don't make it out? Amelia looked at me, eyes sharp like ice. "Then I'll send the data out myself. But if Ethan suspects anything, he'll wipe the whole system. You're the only one left, and the only one who still has a voice." She turned to leave. At the door, she paused, glanced back. "They're not just after your genes, Luke," she said quietly. "They've already started. There's a child in a synthetic womb, created from your DNA." The door clicked shut, and I felt a chill crawl down my spine. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Naomi. It wasn't just a few victims. They had built an entire underground genetic network, legalized by fake records, upheld by silence, and backed by powerful men who believed genetics gave them the right to own people. And tonight, I had to run. Not for myself, but for everyone who might become me next. I counted every passing minute like counting my own heartbeat. When the clock hit 1:58 a.m., I was ready. Amelia's USB was tucked deep in the pocket of my hospital gown. The bandages around my abdomen were still raw, but I couldn't wait any longer. A few more days, and they'd wheel me back into surgery. And next time, no one might stop them. At exactly 2:04, the door to my room accidentally clicked open. No alarm, no guards. She had kept her word. I stepped into the silent hallway, heart pounding like thunder in my ears. The maintenance lights flickered dimly, casting long shadows that made the place feel like a nightmare. I followed the route Amelia had shown me, slipping through the emergency stairwell toward sublevel C, the server room. The only terminal connected to the outside world without firewall proxy filters. The door creaked open. The room was running. Empty. I plugged in the USB. Launched the encrypted live stream software Andrew had installed weeks ago. It connected to a private legal server tied to an old social media network I'd once used with my advocacy group. 3 minutes. 3 minutes to tell the world everything. I hit Go Live. My name is Luke Whitmore. I'm broadcasting from inside Future Life Institute, where I was forcibly operated on, had my biological material extracted against my will, and am about to be used for unauthorized human cloning. I panned the camera to the screen. Sample codes, real names, ultrasound images, forged consent forms with signatures I never wrote. Then I turned the camera back to me, lifting my gown to show the fresh surgical scar on my abdomen. I did not volunteer, just like dozens of others they've brought here, using forged documents, psychological coercion, and the complicity of a deeply broken medical system. A piercing alarm rang out. They'd found me, but I kept my voice steady. If I disappear after this video, if they take me again, just know I tried. Find Amelia, the night nurse, protect her, and if you can. The door burst open. 2 guards stormed in and slammed me to the ground. Shut down Future Life before they create an entire generation of victims. A hit to the back of my head knocked the camera loose. The screen blurred, but the live stream kept going another 15 seconds, recording the scuffle, the shouting, and finally, my voice. I am not anyone's genetic property. When I woke up, I was restrained in a white room, a blinding light overhead. Ethan stood in front of me, face like stone. You betrayed the family, he said coldly. And now, what do you think will save you? I smiled, blood dripping from my mouth. The world's watching now, Ethan. He said nothing, just turned away and locked the door behind him. I don't know how far the video spread. I don't know if my friends, my lawyer, the press saw it in time. But I know one thing. I broke the silence. The secret they've buried for years has now been placed on the operating table. Literally. And once light touches the darkest place, there's nowhere left for them to hide. I don't remember how long I was locked away after the live stream. Maybe 2 days, maybe 5. Time inside Future Life didn't move like in the outside world. It froze, it squeezed, it erased. But one morning, I heard something I never dared to hope for, the sound of helicopters. Not medical transport, not supply aircraft, military helicopters. Then came the alarms, unlike anything I'd ever heard in that building. A staff member ran past my door, pale and panicked, muttering, "Federal emergency! Inspection order!" I slammed my headboard, screaming with all I had left. "I'm here! I'm Luke Whitmore! I'm alive!" The door burst open. It was Amelia. Her face was streaked with dust, but her eyes were sharp. They saw the video. The whole country did. "We have a chance." Behind her, a man in a black suit stepped in and flashed a badge. "Agent Thomas Greer, FBI, Division of Illegal Biogenetics. We need you awake, right now." I stumbled to my feet, still sore, still weak, but more clear-headed than I'd felt in weeks. "They're about to conduct the final harvest ceremony," I said. "I'm the primary donor." Greer nodded. "We know, and we'll stop it before it's too late." Our team rushed down to the sub-level corridors toward Section G, restricted biological access. According to Amelia's files, it was where they conducted genetic succession ceremonies, a euphemism for non-consensual extraction surgeries on high-value subjects. The main door was steel-reinforced. Private guards stood post, dressed in Futura uniforms, armed with unregistered weapons. The FBI and Department of Health tactical units stormed in with precision. Banging, shouting, "FBI, hands where we can see them, drop your weapons." I followed close behind. Every step was a heartbeat. I never imagined I'd return here, to the very surgical room where they tried to turn me into a genetic resource. But this time, I wasn't a victim. I was the living witness. Inside the sterile, white room, a girl, maybe 20, lay strapped to the table, her head secured in a rubber frame, tears running down her cheeks. Beside her stood my father, wearing his lab coat, reading aloud some twisted biological consent rite, like a priest of modern eugenics. Ethan was on the other side, holding a hormone syringe. Not panicked, just cold, like always. When he saw me, he froze. "Luke," he said, "you don't understand. This isn't coercion. This is a higher choice." I walked toward him, eyes locked on his. "I understand perfectly, Ethan. And I choose not to become the monster you are." Agent Greer gave the signal. 2 armored agents tackled Ethan and my father. Shouts rang out. Red lights flashed. Machines powered down one by one. Amelia rushed to the girl, unfastened the restraints, and helped her off the table. The girl collapsed into her arms, sobbing. "I never signed anything. They said it was something I used to want," Amelia whispered. "They don't get to decide what belongs to you. No one does." I stood still, taking in the scene. The surgical lamps, the cryo-freezers, the rows of glass vials marked with codes. This was where they erased Naomi, where they caged me, where they stole the truth from dozens of lives. And now, the world was watching. An agent stepped up beside me. "Would you like to say something before we shut this place down?" I turned to the security camera, knowing it was being recorded by the FBI. Good genes are not for sale. The human body is not property, and no one, not even family, has the right to own what was never theirs. The door slammed shut behind me. Future life was no more, but I knew the real fight had only just begun. 3 weeks after the FBI shut down Future Life, I was discharged, not in triumph, not like a hero stepping out of the battlefield to fireworks and applause, but quietly, hollowed out, and unsure where to even begin. I moved into Sandra's apartment, the attorney friend who once fought beside me for other people's reproductive rights. She was the first to hug me after the live stream went viral. She was the one who fielded every email, every call, every message from journalists, human rights groups, even Hollywood. "They want to make a movie about you," she said, half joking. "But before the film, we've got hundreds of pages to prep for the class action." I nodded, but my eyes didn't focus on anything. Even with the system exposed, even with Ethan and my father under investigation for dozens of federal crimes, I didn't feel free. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the surgical lights, heard the doors slam, felt the needle, heard Ethan whisper, "Don't worry, you just forgot." My legal rights still weren't fully restored. Undoing the fake psych file, revoking the old medical proxy, rebuilding a reputation they tried to erase. It all takes time, and the law doesn't move as fast as viral videos. But the worst part? Some things can't be undone. One morning, Sandra walked in looking unusually serious. She handed me a yellow envelope, postmarked from Utah. Inside was a copy of a birth certificate. Mother, anonymous. Biological father, Luke Whitmore. Child, male, born 6 days ago, through IVF at a satellite Future Life facility. I went still. "They implanted it before your live stream ever aired," Sandra said, her voice low, bitter. "They already had stored embryos, probably from the first time they harvested you, before you even knew." I didn't know what to feel. Rage? Grief? What right did I have to be angry? What responsibility did I have to a child I never agreed to create? He was a part of me, but he wasn't my choice. That night, I took a walk around the neighborhood. The early spring air cut sharp through my jacket, like the world reminding me, this isn't over. My phone buzzed, a message from Amelia. "His name is Noah. His adoptive mother sent a photo. He's healthy. They don't know the truth. Not yet." I didn't respond right away. I looked up at the gray Boston sky and felt something rip inside me. I had destroyed Future Life. But could I destroy the feeling that I was now fragmented? That a part of me existed inside a child I'd never meet and never ask to create? And no matter what I believed, I couldn't unknow that. Next week is the first hearing in our case. Over 40 survivors have joined the lawsuit, and I, once the primary genetic donor, am now the lead witness. "Are you ready to face Ethan?" Sandra asked me. I tightened my grip on the folder in my hands. Inside, Noah's birth certificate, the stolen DNA logs, and the very first sentence I ever wrote in my recovery journal. "I'm not insane. I was just robbed of the right to choose." I took a deep breath. "Not just ready," I said. "I won't let it happen again to anyone else." The federal court opened its official hearing on March 15th. The courtroom was packed, not because everyone wanted justice, but because many wanted to witness the end of a scandal that had shaken the nation. Reporters filled the back rows. Survivors sat in the front, eyes fixed on the witness stand. I stood among them, not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been coerced, manipulated, or silenced inside their own skin. Ethan was escorted into the room, dressed in a dark suit, still composed, still polished. When our eyes met, I no longer saw the brother who used to read to me at bedtime. I saw an ideology. Dressed in a suit, trained to smile, fed by years of beautifully worded justifications. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand, holding my prepared statement, but I didn't read it. I folded it, placed it on the stand, and looked the panel straight in the eye. I spoke in the calmest voice I could manage. My name is Luke Whitmore. I am a victim and living proof that even in what we call a civilized society, bodily autonomy can still be legally taken from you if you're not paying attention. I wasn't locked in a basement. I wasn't beaten. I wasn't starved. I was smiled at, given business cards, shown textbooks, and handed the most terrifying weapon of all, family disguised as morality. I heard the camera shutters click. I didn't care. I kept going. My brother, Ethan, once told me that good genes shouldn't go to waste, that I was standing in the way of the future. But what kind of future is built on coercion, on someone else's body, on forged consent? I am not anti-science. I am against anything pretending to be science, when in truth, it's just power in disguise. I pointed to the screen behind me, a list of over 40 names, all once manipulated into giving up their DNA, many of them minors. We don't get to choose where we're born, but we can choose not to keep passing down pain. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to reclaim something that should have been obvious all along, the right to say no. When I finished, the courtroom fell silent. After a moment, one woman stood, the mother of a survivor, and slowly clapped, then another, then the entire front row. Eventually, nearly the whole room. I bowed my head. I didn't smile. I didn't feel joy. I just felt lighter. For the first time in years, I was no longer a biological product. I was human again. 2 months later, Ethan and my father were convicted of forced biogenetic manipulation, falsification of federal records, and violation of bodily rights. Futura Life was permanently dissolved. Every one of its facilities was shut down. I founded a non-profit called Core Consent, supporting victims of biological exploitation and educating youth on bodily rights and legal autonomy. Noah, the child created from my DNA, still lives with his adoptive family. I don't interfere, but I sent a handwritten letter. You are not the beginning of a tragedy. You are the chance for a cycle to end. I used to believe I'd been ruined, but I wasn't. I'd been distorted, and now I have learned how to reclaim my true shape. Autonomy is not a gift. It's the final line between a human being and a tool. So if someone in your life is making decisions for you, because it's best for you, because it's family tradition, because of genetic responsibility, pause and ask, did I get to choose this? If the answer is no, then it isn't love. It's control.